Welcome to Uncomfortable Conversations about Culture and Christianity. My name is Alex, and today I'm joined by Jess.
Hello, world.
And we are joined by my friends Matt and Heather.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. Today we're having a conversation about just their lives, their marriage. Before we get there, we've had kind of a mini series going on the last few weeks, save the episode we had with Daniel Gill, about just divorce. And we had Aaron and Eva come share their stories about how their marriages ended. And that was something they never would have imagined. And due to just a few different situations. And we heard from Eva, just single parenting, but the redemptive arc of getting remarried. And today we're going to hear from both of you sharing a little bit about your marriage and the story of that and how God's written a redemptive story. But before we get there, just introduce yourselves. Tell us just a little bit about who you are, what you do, your family, whatever, favorite hobbies, whatever you feel like telling the world, because the whole entire world is listening.
The whole world.
Let them know.
Wow. Yeah, like you said, Matt, Heather Allen, longtime watcher, listener, first time appearance. Excited to be here. No. So we've been married, about 12 years now. We have two wonderful girls. And let's see, what else? Fun fact about me, I don't know, I played professional soccer. Seems like a world ago, but I was in FIFA, the video game, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Being able to play myself is kind of really a weird feeling, but no. So that was a while ago, but right now, just really like to golf, woodwork, spend time with family. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'm Heather. Like Matt said, we've been married 12 years, almost 13. We have two girls. I was not a professional soccer player or athlete at all. But I don't know. I just enjoy spending time with our family and like to garden and read. Kind of nerdy.
I think she did read like 4 books in the last 4 days. So
Yeah, it's summer break.
Yeah, there you go.
Alex, did you ever play the video game that Matt was in?
I didn't play
Matt?
video games at all.
Oh, okay.
So maybe
maybe
this
since you were
that
friends.
will be the thing that gets me to play video games, to
That's it.
finally be able to play as Matt Allen on FIFA. If I have the old system, because that was a while ago. I don't think it's on a recent system.
Many years.
But Matt and I have known each other since high school. Both went to Burke right up the street. We entered high school together, but Matt was so superb at soccer that he left high school a year early. So we played basketball together until he left and played, and then really didn't connect much through college. He was too cool and playing at Creighton. And then it was like through a mutual friend that we kind of reconnected. That was your roommate in college, named Sam. Shout out to Sam, who introduced me to my wife, Erin, which is fun. And yeah.
And Heather gets to just be a part of this. And
And she's a part of it.
Just along for the ride.
watch it all.
Well, no, and yeah, like I gotta.
No, I mean, there's definitely a bromance. I feel
there's
it.
a bromance. Yeah, I got to see you both get engaged. Got to be a part of your wedding, which is a joy. But tell us just about way back. You guys met each other a long time ago, like elementary school. Tell us just how you met and how your relationship began, and let's start there. The romance.
Romance. Yeah. So we went to Trinity, now Lifegate School. I don't know, preschool through 8th grade. She was a year younger than me. We never really spoke to each other. We knew of each other.
Was he too cool for you too? And back in the day?
Sure, we'll go with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
I
he thought he was. Okay. Not actual.
I think by middle school, junior high, I probably had a little crush on him. But
Okay.
yeah, he was the Matt Allen.
Oh boy.
The Matt Allen.
Wow.
Wow. With that, no. So what was it? Just one day, I think we were both out at a bowling alley, and Heather was standing a few people in front of me. And I was just like, I think that's Heather. I can't remember, whatever. So that night I got on Facebook, of course, as we all did back, years ago, and messaged her and asked her out. And we went to Kona and Village Point. And as soon as I saw her, I was like, I asked her, I said, hey, let's, get a drink. Let's catch up. And so when I first saw her, I looked at her and was like, this really isn't catching up because I don't think we've ever spoken to each other before. But anyways, we, spent the whole night at Kona. I think they all about kicked us out.
Yeah, we closed the place down.
Yeah. And we had 3 dates within the first week. And I think we both we both knew we wanted to marry each other. And I think about 2 weeks into it, we both told each other that. Mm-hmm. We both had the same feeling.
Yeah, that's
Wow,
cool.
that's awesome.
So we started dating in January, engaged in August, married in December. All in the same year.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a moment of silence for Kona. I just saw
Oh, they just closed.
I thought that when you said that.
they're closing. So we haven't talked about a headline in a while, but there it is. So yeah, things in your marriage, great. Both Christian, kind of met each other, through that world. But what we're going to talk about before the redemptive part is things started out well, and then there was infidelity inside the marriage. And so let's start to talk about maybe just the beginning stages, years of your marriage. How were those things? And then when did this become of something that you realized, had the conversations, just kind of tell, I guess, that narrative.
Sure. Yeah, I would say early on we thought we had a pretty good marriage. We definitely did a lot together. We spent a lot of time together. Once kids came around, that kind of shifted. I had quit my job, stayed home, and I think that was kind of when we entered into kind of a roommate phase and really just drifted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that, there's obviously so many well-intentioned people out there, but that try to give advice or do give advice to first-time parents or soon-to-be first-time parents. And I tell you what, there's no advice in the world that can ever prepare you personally for when you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is, you just don't understand or comprehend what kids do and how they change your world in such a great but challenging way, right? Especially first time on. And so, yeah, I would say with Heather, like, again, marriage started out great and we had a lot of fun. And I think it was just like a slow creep of things, of the stress of the kids, job. I mean,
you were traveling a lot for work at that point, and yeah, we just weren't intentional with our time.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, to be fair, could happen to so many people inside of, like you were saying, nothing can prepare you for that. Because when you go from our entire lives is around each other, even when you're pregnant, like it's exciting, we're pumped to have a baby, we created this together, it's going to be magical. But then you walk into a world where like now your whole entire life is dominated by this little human
Right.
that demands all of your time, all of your attention. You're sleep deprived. It's hard to be in a good mood, like even how you guys described it. Kind of, you go to that roommate phase, and it can happen to anybody. And I think it happens in more marriages than people would like to admit.
Absolutely.
When that, especially if you have one kid and then that doesn't get solved, and then shortly after here comes another one, it creates even a bigger block and wedge. I'm sure you see this in your counseling from time to time, Jess.
Yeah.
Where,
And I even think like it's something that we can all relate to, because it's like when you're talking, I'm thinking it's like your dreams become a reality, and that reality is not sunshine and rainbows. But I think that you guys talked, and I hear like some of even like the warning signs or stressors that happen in those early years of even parenting. And to me, that even could lead to like the breakdown of like communication, or you just don't see each other as much. Or like, I remember when Ben and I first had kids, it's like, okay, did we talk today? Like, was that like 15 minutes seeing each other and passing enough? Like, were there other warning signs for you or stressors that came up like that too?
I don't know.
I would say, I mean, our communication was pretty centered around the kids and what just kind of the details of logistics. I don't know that we had like big red flags. It was just kind of a slow,
Like a
drift.
slow burn of
Yeah.
When I think too, like even just like how we liked our alone time, or like time doing our own things, and we still do to this day, and I think in a healthy, at least more healthy way, right? But like I remember early on, it'd be me playing video games in the basement. That's where we had the big setup for it all, right? And so I'd be down there until late, and you'd just be doing your own thing. And like early on in our marriage, it's like, okay, like we didn't really know better, I guess at the time. Maybe we did, but I don't think that, I mean, I know that didn't help our relationship at all. We weren't connecting, we weren't talking, I mean, I think our conversations and arguments also too, like led to us just, we didn't know how to handle those. And we would be separate, we'd go away from each other, right? If we were arguing, we'd just shut down and go away. And I think that started to increase too.
yeah.
Well, and I think we weren't we were going to church, but we weren't like actively involved. We didn't have a great support system. And so if the kids didn't sleep well that night, it was easy to stay home and no one noticed we weren't there. And so I think it was easy for us to just drift kind of in all aspects in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And I think it's important also to mention to everybody, just in case they're thinking, oh, this is happening in my marriage.
Right.
Is this what's going to happen? I think obviously we'll say it out loud. No, like doesn't mean that this is a prescriptive thing. Is like you had a kid or you're thinking about having kids. You're like, oh no, I shouldn't have kids because these are things that are going to happen. They are natural, as we've all acknowledged, but then there's ways that, and healthy ways to work through this. And so I don't want someone to automatically start to play detective in your marriage when that's not even needed.
Right,
it can create actually more rifts and division. But
it's our story.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is what we've been through. Just because we are going through it doesn't mean it matches up right 1-to-1 to anyone else.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, the infidelity. Like how did that come to light? Just the emotions from both of you probably during just tell you, confession or however it went.
Yeah. So we went to our church. It was on a Sunday, and the sermon series was on fear, guilt, shame, anger. And that Sunday was on guilt. And that rocked my world. I mean, I had been holding on to, something for a couple of years, and it was eating me alive. But during that sermon, God really convicted me to the point where like Heather knew something was wrong with me.
You were like physically had changed.
Yeah.
You could see it all over you.
Yeah. And so we got home, I think put the kids down for a nap or whatever that looked like. And we laid on our bed, and it was probably a good 30 minutes of me just crying on the bed. And like, I could not get the words out. And finally, I got them out and confessed to Heather that I had affairs.
Yeah. So my world shattered in that moment. And, I think I just felt every feeling that there possibly was, a lot of disbelief and shock. And I think I was surprised and not surprised, and just, there was just a lot going on. Not even sure I could pinpoint a single feeling. It was a lot.
Yeah. And I think for me, right, like sounds weird saying out loud, right? But it's like, it was the best day ever for me, in a sense of like, I had been holding on to this deep, dark secret, and I finally brought it to the light. But at the same time, right, the other edge of it is like, it's obviously devastating news. And, for Heather receiving that and what it did to her by me speaking those words out loud and finally getting it there in my actions, like obviously it was very conflicting feelings, right? Obviously though, like it was not a fun day. It was not a good day. It was a great day.
Not.
Sitting here on this side of the table right now, it's a great day. We can see it in that light, but at the time, obviously that was
rough.
It was horrible. It was a bad day.
Yeah, I remember there's not a lot of like conversations as an adult that I remember, like where I was and driving, but I remember I was getting off on 192nd Street and you called me and told me about this. And I remember, sorry, I'm getting emotional. I just remember like weeping, and I got home and Aaron's like, you don't come home crying very often. And so I'm like, you're right. And I told her, that because my heart was broken for obviously Heather and for you in that moment. And just like, and probably there's guilt. I think anytime something like that, I didn't see it coming. Obviously you didn't either, like, oh, this is great. And then as a friend, there's like always guilt, like, what could I have done? Like, I think the enemy just tries to, and there's nothing obviously like I could have done, in that, but, I remember just like feeling the weight of it. Like I mentioned, I'm like, oh, I love these guys and I love their love. I was a part of watching you guys get engaged and got to be a part of your wedding. So that's like a sacred thing when somebody invites you into those things. And so when you are, as a friend, are committing to like, hey, being a friend, supporting their marriage, I got to take your girls' baby pictures even, you know, and that was a special thing for me. And so as a friend, it was just a heartbreaking thing. And you don't know at that point how's this thing going to go? You know, so obviously you guys are here now. You're
After
together, but
yeah. And after you guys had that conversation, and was that part of the confession or part of like, what do we do next, that you would tell people in your inner circle, or like, what was that like, or like what happened?
Well, I think we called, or you called, I made you do it, one of our pastors, and he was at our house the next day at our kitchen table to just kind of start that process of like, what does this look like? How do we move forward? Where are we even at? So that was where we started. And then from there, I think we told our small group at the time. And we kept it pretty close to home for a while, just while we sorted through the emotions and the feelings, and try not to get too much outside input, but it give us the time and space to really process, like, what do we need? What does this look like? Without getting all the voices surrounding.
Yeah, and anytime we tell this story, or anytime, I always try to give Heather so much credit for this. She, you know, as she just said, like, we kept it our circle close of like who we spoke to about this, but especially for Heather as the wronged against party. You know, she was very intentional of who she spoke to, and you know, the whole world would say, divorce Matt. Like, you shouldn't be with him. Like, leave him, right? And so like Heather really surrounded herself with friends, and chose friends and family that she knew she could confide in and trust, that ultimately would point her back to Jesus, instead of just all the other negative thoughts. And yeah, so I know that was incredibly tough for her. But I mean, I think through that, like, she honored the Lord, even honored our marriage, and me in one of the hardest times when I did not deserve any of that.
Heather, how did you process through that and come to the conclusion of like, this is worth fighting for?
Yeah, we were kind of talking about that a little bit, and I'm not sure that we ever even mentioned divorce. It was just like, okay, we're in this. He was pretty repentant at that point, pretty quick. So I think that helped to be like, okay, there's like, it's done. We want to move forward. So processing, we talked a lot with our pastor, and then he got us hooked into a local nonprofit that works with marriages. And so we kind of had people alongside of us right away that were like, let's dig deep, and really pointed us back to Jesus through the whole time. So I don't know that we ever even talked about divorce. I don't remember that ever coming into our conversation.
No, I remember at one point we were in the kitchen or somewhere, and Heather looks over at me and she's like dawned on her. She's like, wait, do you even want to continue on this or like stay married? And then I remember the thought at the time, I was like, that's such a, in my head, I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, that's such a silly question. Of course, like I do. Like, there was no other option for us. Like, I knew, like, you know, we should fight for this. You know, and I got to say too, you know, confessing to her instead of getting caught
made a huge difference.
A massive difference, right? I mean, I think, you know, anytime that we get caught in something, then it's, you're fighting uphill, right? You're just doing what you can, clawing back to try to like get back to where you were in the relationship, or make the other spouse or the other person like feel good enough that you don't have to deal with it anymore. Versus like, I think there's so much power and weight in confessing before you get caught. I think, as Heather said, that made a world of a difference, instead of her finding out with me telling her.
yeah. I'm curious. So you've talked about, you know, obviously you sought, you know, your pastor's counsel, and you got involved in this ministry. What were the practical steps? Like, if you're thinking through, okay, here's what these people walked us through. Like, we've got to rebuild something. Trust has to be rebuilt. There's probably a lot of things that were in shambles that had to be rebuilt. So what were just some of, like, through either the pastoral help or through the ministry that you're a part of, those steps that you had to take early to start to rebuild some of that trust?
Yeah, you lost a lot of your rights and privileges and a lot of things. I think for me, I was kind of a walking zombie for a little while I was processing and trying to figure out what had really just happened, and this just bombshell that had occurred. So we did Find My Friends right away on his phone, like that kind of stuff. Pretty much you had to update me all the time. The Find My Friends would sometimes like ping that he was elsewhere. So I'd FaceTime him and he'd be sometimes sitting in a meeting and I'd just see like his chin and then kind of a little scroll around the room to show like, nope, I'm here. I'm where I said I was. But there was a lot of that initially and a lot of just like, yeah, I just didn't have any trust for what you said or where you were going to be. So that was a long road to rebuild that.
Yeah, that was obviously I wanted to do that for Heather, but being honest, like that was hard for me. I mean, I was dying to myself, like my independence, my freedom, right? And it may sound silly for me to say that out loud, right, for people listening in, but I had the best intentions in the world, but that was very hard to let her to even put tracking on her phone. So now it seems silly thinking about it where we're at with our marriage, but back then it was like that was a huge step. And I'm like, I don't have anything to hide. Like, why do you need to keep asking me and all of this? And obviously that took a while for me to work through. But I don't know, it was probably a month or two of doing that. I think I finally started to like be at a place where like my heart could fully be like, no, I'm doing this because this is what my wife needs. It may not all the time make sense of exactly what she's asking, but I know this is what she needs. And I wish I could have gotten to that point in my heart sooner.
Me too.
Right. But ultimately, like my heart posture turned more towards hearing her heart instead of hearing my selfishness, what I wanted through that.
And meantime, you have these daughters.
Right.
How old, just to fill in that, like how old were your girls around that time?
3 and 1-ish, somewhere in that range.
So you're in the throes of it
right.
still.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're not sleeping still.
all that fun stuff is still happening, and
yes.
the added stress from that. And then you find out this. Matt, I'm curious, like from you, like how you shared a little bit about that dying to yourself, but as you're like going through this and you're trying to protect Heather, right? Like I'm the one that put me in this position, but as you're trying to like explain it to friends or other people, like, dude, what the heck's up with your wife? Like, I'm sure there's probably like, Matt, what are you FaceTiming all the time for? Like, how did you deal with like your own probably pride and insecurities inside of that, and like protect her, not throw her under the bus because it wasn't her wrong at this? Like, I'm just curious, like how that narrative went on inside of you.
Wish I probably had a better answer for you, but it didn't really like come up in public or with friends. There was never really awkwardness of it. Again, I think, you being one of the friends I chose to tell, not a ton of people knew. So I think that helped too. There wasn't necessarily all the judgment coming from different places or that awkwardness, or like even if we were together out in public, there wasn't that awkwardness. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious. One question I do have as far as telling people is family. So like, you've got 2 daughters now. I've got 3 daughters. Like, I can't imagine like someone coming to me and having that conversation with me. So just how did that go? And like, how did whatever you guys are comfortable sharing, like how were those conversations and how were you guys met in those with your parents, her parents? Just in that conversation, as much as you're like comfortable sharing.
Yeah. Well, I'd say we're pretty close to my parents, and my mom's probably one of my best friends. So it was hard to kind of keep, to not share right away with her. But in some wise counsel we had gotten was to kind of keep that close. And so kind of waiting for that time. She knew I was not okay. I mean, that was apparent. So we had just shared with them, we were going through some things. Would you just pray for us? And so When we did share, we were actually out of town with them on a trip, and we were in Mexico. And you just kind of opened up, and we were at a totally different place at that point. And so when you shared.
Yeah, so we're sitting outside in the balcony, and that was the first time we actually shared what was going on. And, obviously this was their daughter that I hurt, right? And so with that, I felt like, I needed to seek forgiveness from them. Even though we are married, right? You still are their daughter. And so it was pretty awesome. I got done telling them, what we've been through, and I asked both her mom and her dad for forgiveness. And I still remember it clear as day. And I use this in many conversations to this day because it's so awesome. Her dad looks at me and he said, "You know what? Heather forgave you. God forgave you. Of course I'll forgive you." Or I do forgive you. And and just thinking about that, and the forgiveness aspect of it, of like, how many times do we like reference what Jesus did for us, what he does for us day in and day out, of how his grace is freely given to us, his forgiveness is freely given to us. And like, let's reference that, right? We reference the Bible, but I'm like, Heather, no, God forgave you. Of course, I'm going to forgive you. So that just stuck in my mind. Super powerful.
Thinking back to that time, I do think that like there's nothing like experiencing the tenderness of the Father. Was there, even as we're like talking back and going back to that time, was there anything that like Jesus was like, he's healing your hearts in this, as much as you're like relying on other people? Was there something where like there was like an anchor point or a verse or something, like a promise of God that was like, that stuck out at that time or got you through?
Absolutely. Every time I opened my Bible, it didn't matter where I was. This is even in the book of Jonah, the steadfast love of the Lord. And for me, it was re-anchoring myself in that my identity was not as a mom, it's not as Matt's wife, it's God's child. And so just positioning my heart to receive that and really believe that again was pivotal. And my favorite verse is the one in Lamentations about the steadfast love of the Lord. And so, I think that was a turning point for me, was being able to say, okay, he's going to mess up. He's going to make mistakes. So am I, but God is not. And so really just centering myself in the Lord was huge.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, I think for me, and really both of us too, one of the things our pastor and others really pointed us to, probably on like day 2 or day 3, was every day, open up your Bible, make time together and read Proverbs. And I'll tell you what, like still to this day, we were in the midst of
Chaos. Crisis.
You're destroyed. And here we are, like on day 3, sitting down at our kitchen table, put the kids to bed. And we did that for, a couple months, every night. And we would just, all right, day 1, Proverbs 1. And we'd read through it. Sometimes we'd be taking notes. At the end of it, we would pray. We would have conversations. Sometimes it was 10 minutes on our thoughts or anything else. Other
about
times,
what we read in Proverbs.
Right. And other times we would sit there for 2-3 hours. And I mean, coming from our relationship where like that never happened, we never had that intentionality. Like we saw a lot of healing, and I know you did, but especially healing in our marriage through just that intentional time of reading Proverbs together. Who knows? I mean, it could have been something about the Bible we talked about, or anywhere else. But yeah, I think that we'll both hold that time so close.
Crazy as it sounds, because it was the time of chaos and pain and hurt. But it's some of my favorite time to look back on in our marriage, of just those nights that we would spend for hours, some nights, like Matt said, just really digging deep in conversation. And I think it was that emotional connection that we had missed for so long that was really deepening. And it was deepening on the foundation of the Word.
Yeah. I mean, here at the end of the day, like we're only sitting here because of what God has done for us. and what he provides to us each and every day. And like we were interjecting God's word right back into our lives, into our marriage, bringing God right back to it, which was very much lacking.
Yeah, it's what we needed to have done from the get-go.
Right. Yeah.
I'm curious. I mean, you guys talked about you've shared with trusted friends and you kept kept it pretty close. But were there ever times that people did find out and they were like, "What are you actually doing?" And maybe especially to you, Heather, or were there ever like moments of like comments or snide remarks or things you just got from people that they're like, what are you doing? This guy's an idiot. You know what? I'm just curious if there was ever that, or because you kept it so close, that just never happened.
I don't know that I remember a specific instance where someone was like, "What are you doing?" Probably because we kept it close. And then by the time we were sharing, we were changed people, just our own hearts and then in our marriage as well. So I don't know. We were careful, like we said, with who we shared. And there were some conversations, I guess, that were, I don't know what's the right word, not great. But ironically, they came from within the church the most, were kind of some of the harder conversations.
Of just wanting like an explanation, like, okay, we know this, like
More judgment.
give your defense, or okay.
Yeah, more judgment of like, I can't believe he did that, like that. And sure, we all felt that way. But I think even, just kind of not seeing the healing or the redemption that the Lord was doing or would do, but sitting in that spot of how could he?
Yeah.
And so did you guys like have mentors in this space? Like that the ministry that you were a part of, were there other people that you're like, okay, they've been through the same things. And so you were able to at least invite them into the conversation and see, okay, day one's really difficult, but I've seen God write a redemptive story in other people's lives and then they're journeying through you. Like, what did that look like, I guess?
Yeah. So early on, we got plugged in with Roger and Denise Friesen, some of our dearest friends, and we love them so much. But they pulled us in pretty close to them. They also had a small group, if you will, of more or less other people that have hurting, maybe the same situation as us, other issues in their marriages.
It's really a marriage-focused small group.
Marriage-focused small group, exactly. And so like that was great to just be a part of because we really felt like free in that group. It was a very transparent group, a group that wanted to go deep. It didn't matter what you said, or there was nothing you could have said that was too shocking for the group. And that these people got it, right? They may not have gone through exactly what we've gone through, but they've gone through hard times. And so that was huge. And for us too, this was in about May of 2017 is when I confessed to Heather. And then July, we went through a program, the nonprofit Heart Care. And that was really a pivotal point in our marriage. I think we had seen a lot of God's work in both of our lives leading up from May until July. And a lot of restoring and healing between us. But then it was really with Heart Care. I mean, that obviously everyone knows about Heart Care, but it goes from birth till now and everything that's impacted you and everything. And, long story short, we both realized that we both had so much that has affected us in our past that shapes, molds us, affects us to this day. And so like we left after going through Heart Care, we left completely changed new people. I mean, I think that was a pivotal moment in our marriage. We as soon as we were done, we went to Colorado and we took a weekend trip, just the two of us. And I just still remember like we recorded a video going up a ski lift and of like just thanking like our small group, thanking God for just everything that has happened. I mean, we felt, I don't know, you can say, but we felt free in that moment of everything.
Yeah, I think that, like Matt was saying, the Heart Care program really helped walk us through not just what happened, but what has led to that point, even before we were married. And so it allowed us to dig deep together and hear the things from his, growing up and my growing up and, what kind of has shaped us to the people that we are. And really being able to lay it before the Lord. And that was kind of the foundation is let's bring this to the Lord.
Mm-hmm. I know for me as like a pastor, and I know Jesse, you helped lead some of these ministries at CCC, and a lot of churches have, we're like people be in small groups, and there's just generic small groups going through whatever sermon series or things like that. But oftentimes I'm grateful that we have some ministries and others just have ministries that are like, and there's times you need to not just be plugged into the normalcy of small group, because not that they're not deep enough or whatever we think deep enough means. But there's times where you need to get around wounded healers or people that have been through the same thing. So we have things like divorce care here, or we have grief share, or a lot of other addiction groups, codependency. And so I think one of the things that I always highlight to people inside of our church, maybe you need to leave your small group for a while and kind of is what you guys are sharing you did and walked into with seasoned people that even if they didn't maybe have the exact same experience, are really fighting for their marriages, and you can have conversations in an open, freeing place about, hey, we all know we walk into this room because we're all messy, and most small groups, we kind of say that, it's kind of a platitude, but nobody really wants to open up and share the mess, Right. And so I think that's one key thing that you guys have done that I don't want to just minimize, because I think sometimes we think, oh, but I can just keep going normal. I can keep having the normal rhythms in my life, or just be in my normal small group and everything's going to be okay. But highlighting the deep work and transparency that it does take to find hope and healing and to walk into a space like that. I don't know if you have more to...
Well, it's also like so different when you're in a group of people that have had experiences like you have or walked something similar. And it's like, I don't have all the words in my brain, but they do. Or like, you don't have to say it all because they get it. And there's just such a difference in groups like that, or even just like going to counseling where it's like, I see you, you don't have to say everything. Or I can even like say what I hear from your heart that's different, that you can't say yourself. And so I think that there's a beauty in that. I think that God uses that. And yeah, I just hear like so much intentionality behind, like you had a choice, like you did, like whether you've said it or not, like you had a choice to like be intentional and be committed. And there is a point where I'm sure at some point Satan was like, all right, like, he tries to like jab and sneak things in, and just like the commitment and intentionality that I see between you two, it's like, man, you not only like knocked down and brought light into the darkness, but you like built a wall that's like protecting your marriage and like keeping you safe, but also like it's open where you're willing to help other people. And that's the beauty of, like you said, Matt, like confessing and like bringing that out and letting him use that. So cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just curious too, like in that process, is there new things that you've added to your life that I know you talked a little bit about that, but like that maybe you weren't doing, that's like we without fail, like do this now, or we needed to add this rhythm, or we needed to add this routine. Obviously reading the Bible together.
We pray every morning together before one of us leaves the house. Like that's a non-negotiable. It's what we do. I would say we pray often together, more than just the morning too. Sometimes it's a phone call in the middle of the day, like I am so stressed out. He'll pick up the phone and call me and we'll pray together real quick. Or even when we got here, we sat in the car for a few minutes and prayed. And so I think that has become just such a rhythm for us that I don't know, it's like second nature.
I would just say to that, like there's a lot of things that we've done that we've grown closer to each other that has taken years to get to, right? Like Matt and Heather sitting here today is a lot closer and learned a lot more things, right, than from years ago. But I would say this without a doubt, prayer is the most crucial thing any couple even too can do, right? Like we were the couple that, again, we were raised in the church, right? Like we know what we should be doing.
We knew better.
We knew better, but like our prayer life consisted of praying over groceries when we sat down for a meal. But it was awkward. It was awkward praying out loud together, like just Heather and I. But that awkwardness, like we got over it pretty quick. And how Heather was sharing, I think by just knowing each other so well, we'll be in the middle of a fight and whoever's has enough, courage or whatever will say
Humility.
Yeah, you're right. Humility. Let's pray.
Whoever feels the closest to God in that
Yeah.
moment.
Yes. But like we'll pray, right? And we'll pray for each other, whatever it is. And there's more times than not, we come out of that prayer and whatever it is was bothering us, we were upset about, it's gone. I mean, I think prayer and forgiveness have been two staples of our marriage and succeeding and growing closer to each other, growing closer to God. And the fact of, again, we didn't fight very well. We didn't come back to the table, and just working through of like how to ask for forgiveness, right? What if you're not ready to say, hey, I forgive you? Like, what do you do, right? Like setting times to come back to it later. No, Heather, like I'm too upset right now, but hey, give me an hour. We'll come back. We'll revisit this, right? There's so many things we could go down rabbit holes with that of best ways to do it. But again, it was that intentionality and communication, right? Of how are we communicating well enough to be able to like, no, like still upset, but I want to keep working on it. And versus the old Matt and Heather would be like, I'm upset. We may not even say it, but we might show it. And then we'd go separate ways or we'd shut down or whatever that looked like. Yeah. But I mean, still to this day, like Find My Friends is on there. I mean, we both have access to each other's phones, everything like that. And now it's just like, no big deal. It's just, it is what it is. And the FaceTimes have gone down in frequency.
I can't remember the last time I actually FaceTimed you.
Maybe Apple's just getting a little more accurate with not putting me in a cornfield and putting me actually where I am. No. Yeah.
I think keeping those safeguards in place, even when things are far from where they were, but just still keeping those up.
Just another one too. We're really intentional about communication with others, especially others of the opposite sex. And, if it's a text message, what we will do is, if a guy texts Heather or a girl texts me, we'll start a new thread and I'll put our spouse on it. It's not going to lunch or being like one-on-one with a place of the opposite sex. Right. And that's been really hard. I mean, nothing like
harder for you in your daily capacity.
Right. I don't think anything negative has come from it, but I know like it's just hard. Like I know in a few different my jobs, I've had to tell my boss, who's been a female, of like, hey, just so you know, like if we were to go out to lunch, like I'm going to drive separate, or like, hey, I remember one time one of my female bosses asked me like, hey, let's go to lunch, and no ill intent. It was just a business lunch, right? But I had to tell her, hey, like I can't do this, and this is why. Of like my wife and I, we have this commitment to each other. Like this is not something we're going to do. I may have missed out on things at work. I don't know, but nothing is more important than keeping our relationship together. And it's just so, again, countercultural. And I mean, even in the church, if you will, but how that's just, there's not a lot of intentionality behind that. People don't see how like that can infiltrate our marriage, right? And it doesn't start out with anything big, right? As we know, the enemy likes to just as you said earlier, just pluck away. And I remember a conversation with a girl at work was talking about how she went to lunch with her with some other guy. I don't remember the context of it, but I think I made a joke of like, oh, what does your husband think of that? And she made the statement of like, oh, he doesn't care. I can do whatever I want. And I was just like, in that moment, I didn't say anything, but I was just like, man, this is so sad. I'm just like, it just hurts my heart because I know, going through it firsthand of, again, how my affairs didn't start like 0 to 100. I mean, it was a slow kind of burn, which led me to my terrible decisions. But it's just like, we need to protect our marriage and fight for our marriage and protect it at all costs. But these are things we've learned, right? Like through my mistakes, this is something that I learned, or we learned, I should say, that no one taught us this. And, that is so important. Like, people just may not have the resource or even think about this because no one's been able to share it with them, or I don't know. Anyways.
I'm curious, like, Heather, for you, how did you not think that put the blame on yourself, right? Like, I think it's natural. Like, I've had conversations with people and it's not yours, but the enemy wants you to like take the blame for it. Right. And well, it's because I'm not this, or I'm not fulfilling these needs for Matt, emotional, spiritual, whatever, physical needs. Like, how did you like reject those? And maybe somebody's feeling that right now and they're like, well, it's my fault. And that's gaslighting. I mean, people do that often, where, well, if you would have, then I wouldn't have, because, and we try to, minimize our own accountability and our own involvement in the sin. It's like, full stop. Matt's the one that broke the vows, right?
Right.
But the enemy wants you to do opposite. And our pretentious pride wants us to also like make you more involved in it than you were. So like, how did you just wrestle through that? And what words would you give to like maybe somebody else that the enemy is like speaking those lies into them and trying to deprecate their image of God that they are? Just what would you say to that and speak into it? Yeah,
I would say I had Matt on a pedestal for so long that when this came to light, it was a lot of, what did I do? What could I have done differently? All of these things. And so I did have to wrestle with, am I good enough? And, what was my part in this? And to some degree, yes, there's some accountability for me not being intentional for years, but like you said, his choice was his choice. And so I had to get to that place to see and to hear the Lord, to allow him to let me know that like, I am his child and I am enough for him. And whatever happened with Matt and I had to just sit with the Lord. It took people speaking into me and really just calling out, those are lies. Those are lies you are believing. And yeah, so it took time. It took a lot of time in the Word, a lot of time with just surrounding myself with people who would speak life into me. And I think, but just grounding myself in, what does God really say about me and who I am in him? And I don't think there's a quick, easy fix for that. That's just allowing the Lord to heal you and the Lord to really, or I guess allowing yourself to see who the Lord sees you as. And that just kind of takes time and intentionality with Jesus.
I think too, like that's, what we've talked about of like being in the small group, surrounding yourself with people that can just straight out tell you like, no, Heather, that's a lie that you're believing from the enemy. Like, who can have that place, in our lives. I think that really helped you a lot too.
It did. Yeah.
And how about shame for you, Matt? Like, I'm sure that like the guilt was kind of that overwhelming gift. I think we always talk about guilt like it's the worst thing, but I think sometimes gift is the guilt that the Spirit gives us. And I guess the word guilt, maybe, not guilt's good. Condemnation's not. So how did you deal with like just the aftermath of the shame and your identity inside of this as like, hey, I mean, you're on a podcast because of your infidelity. You're like that, right? And so like, how do you continue to not like have that as the label of who you are, but it is a part of your story. And we'll talk after that about how God's redeeming it.
Yeah. I think it was challenging, especially in the beginning. And again, I knew this was 100% my fault, right? Like my actions contributed exactly to what we're going through right here. So, having to deal with that. But then also too, of just like, I remember of like, I felt like I almost didn't have a voice and, and it was because of, my guilt, my shame. that was something that was really hard to work through, because I felt like I couldn't really speak up if there was something wrong, or not necessarily that Heather did, or, you know, it was just more of like I couldn't say anything because I felt like, nope, I did this to her, I caused this, you know, whatever it was. And so like, I think that was hard to deal with. But also too, of just like my role as the husband, like how I've failed Heather in one, protecting her heart, you know, helping both of us grow and leading her. And so that took a while too of, you know, I think feelings of like, oh, Heather's, you know, has a better relationship with God. And so like, and that hits me, and it's just like, those are, you know, I feel guilty for that. I'm like, I should be leading and, you know, and we should be, you know, raising our kids and in God. And so it's just a whole mix of emotions. I don't know if I have an answer to it other than just time. Time heals a lot. You know, the Lord diving into the word, really just understanding what his grace and forgiveness really means, right? Until like, I feel like we all like, you know, no matter how long you've been attending the church, right? We always talk about God's grace, his forgiveness, right? Like that's the number one thing that we preach, and however it comes out every Sunday. But until like we actually, I think this is me speaking, but like have a pivotal moment in our life where we can truly feel like, no, God, forgive me for this, like in with my affairs. Like that was a pivotal moment I remember feeling of like, okay, I am a child of God. Like I have sinned. I've sinned terribly. I've sinned against God. I've sinned against our marriage and the covenant we made with God. I've sinned against my wife. But like God covers that, right? We have a saying like, but Jesus, right? All this happened, but Jesus. And so that was really powerful and something I've never experienced in my life before. That true sense of freedom and grace that God gives us. Yeah.
I know the Uncomfortable podcast isn't the first time you guys are sharing your story, that's been happening for a while. How did it come to be with this, protecting it and working through healing and getting to a place where it's like, okay, now we want to share, we want to help, we want to use this in a way that's glorifying to God? How have you guys, I guess, started that, been doing that? Obviously part of your redemption story in that.
Well, we've always said our story for his glory. And so
I love that.
Yeah. We both have it tattooed on our arms, but
Well, yeah, I have, for those listening can't see this, but I have May 7th of 2017 tattooed on my wrist. And that was the day that I said that God started restoring our marriage.
that was a fun conversation about that tattoo.
Right. She's like, why do you want to get that
worst day of
worst
my
date
life.
ever?
That's what I said. I was like, that is the worst day.
I said, but hey, hear me out. Here's what I'm thinking. And so in the middle, next line down is the logo of our old church. And it was like through community, through the church and God. And then in the end is Hebrew that says glory to God. And so that the tattoo block there reads as what just Heather just said is our story for his glory. Wow. Yeah. Anyways. Sorry.
Funny enough, when Matt had texted me that you had asked if we would be willing to come on here, as I was reading the text, I was like, okay, Lord. And within seconds, all I hear is the line from the children's song. This little light of mine, I hear, hide it under a bushel. No, I'm going to let it shine.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, Holy Spirit, you got some jokes today. But it was like, okay, this is why, not why we went through what we did, but for us to be able to share what God has done and give him the glory for it makes it worth going through.
Yeah. And I think from early on too, like we saw what God had done in our lives, and it's like, man, we felt that freedom, that recovery, just that closeness with God. And it's like, we started having a passion for it. Right. And we got plugged in with the Friesens again and really started just diving right into trying to help marriages and however we could, you know, and we still in one capacity or another do that today. We're on a marriage team at our church right now. And, again, I think it's because of what God has done and what he's shown us. Like we want to give that back. Like we didn't learn all these things. We didn't go through this experience just for us, right? Like this is, again, his story, and like any chance that we can get to give him the glory, right? Even the words we say here, like I hope anyone listening is like, it's not about Matt and Heather. Mm-mm. It's like, we just get to be, an instrument in the Redeemer's hands, right? God doesn't need us. He chooses to work through us. It's, are we going to listen and give him the glory? And that's what we want to do. And so, I think too, also from me sharing and, hiding my affairs for so long, that it kind of opened up a floodgate that I've had to fine tune with Heather's help over the years. But it's like, okay, I don't want to keep anything in. So I'm just going to talk. I'm just going to share what's on my mind. I mean, I'm a pretty outgoing, open guy anyways. But that was hard. that was hard to work through.
We had to rein you in a little bit.
There's things that, we need to keep between us.
Yeah. Like where are the appropriate places?
Yeah.
But I know it's conflicting in me of like, I need to share this. I feel like I need to share this.
You were so excited to be free that it was just like everything. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, buddy. Yeah. Let's bring that in. Yeah. No, I think that through it, the Lord has given us a heart to help others and walk with them and be an ear that understands. We know what the hurt feels like and the pain, but we also see the other side of it. And so, marriages we've worked with have not always ended in a redemption story within the marriage, but we've seen God work through them and in their own lives and their hearts. And so I think that even that in and of itself is just amazing to see how God can work through brokenness and take what we have destroyed and make something beautiful out of it.
That's so cool. Well, this has been, thank you for just the courage, to be a part of this and share, this openly and letting the Lord use you guys, your story for his glory. I think Jess is sold. She's going to get that tattoo with you guys. So that's good. I think I'm going to hold off. But anybody else wants to get tattoos of your story for his glory, we can get a promo code. No, I'm totally kidding. But is there anything else you guys want to, as you're just thinking about this, been praying about this, that the Lord's laid on your heart? I mean, obviously you've shared a lot, so I'm not saying if you don't, that's not good. But anything else in closing that you want to make sure we talk about, or Jess, even you, as we kind of land the conversation?
One thing I was thinking about is like, how do you, for those listening, like either going through it or maybe more so like know others that are going through it, maybe your friend, family member, like what does that look like, right? And that can be tricky. I was thinking about it. I was like, it's kind of like when you have a death in either the family or a close friend that, they had a death, and it's like, you go to the funeral or a visitation, you're like, this feels awkward. I don't know what to say. But like, I think in the end it's just like, be there for them. Right? Like come around them and just know too, is like, and this is super important, is like, you don't have to give advice, especially if you maybe haven't been through it or don't know, like that can be so damaging, right? Because then it can like pollute one's thoughts or direction that they go, or it can just introduce something into an already unhealthy marriage. And so like, I would just give some caution of that, because Matt and Heather's experience is not a one-to-one of anyone else's marriage. And so like, I can't interject my experience and say, this is what you should exactly do. So again, just being cautious of that. But in the end, I want to just say like, don't shy away from it, especially if it's another brother and sister in Christ. Like come alongside them. Pray for them. If you don't know anything else to do, prayer. I think that was one of the ways too of like, we experienced a little bit of hurt within the church of just like, I think even people shied away from praying with us. And I remember a few times I was like, oh, okay. I guess, I don't know, kind of feel loved. Wish they could have just really surrounded us. So like just that encouragement of like, run towards that couple in love and prayer. And that's all you have to do. If you don't know what else to do, there's plenty of other people that you can point them to. Like that are experts or that are counselors or church, anyone. So I don't know. That's where I would probably leave it.
I think there's just always hope. It may not look like it in the moment, but there's hope and there's light at the end of it.
Yeah.
And just anchoring yourself in the Lord really brings that hope and that peace that you can feel in the midst of the storm.
We would not be here today if it wasn't for the Lord.
Nope.
Well, we wouldn't be in this room or married.
Not together.
Not together. Hopefully we'd still be
separate
living,
episodes.
but yeah.
Anything else you want to add, Jess?
As you were talking, Matt, I was just thinking about, you don't have to have all the words to say. And I was just thinking about like when you called Alex and like Alex just cried with you. And sometimes that's all we need is just for someone to meet us where we're at and not have words, but just to validate our emotions. And I wish we had like more time to just talk about, just how that changed your relationship. And like that deepens friendships when you trust people with like, not just the highlight reel, but just the ugly stuff. It's like we are real and authentic. And I mean, that took a lot of trust to do that. Do you have anything to say in final? Because
No,
I feel like that's a lot of.
I cry with Matt. I probably cried for him afterward. I probably hung up and then cried. So I don't want to get that narrative too wrong, because I was probably too proud to cry with him. But no, I think it's just, this has been a great gospel, story. I mean, even you pointing, to the tattoo, and like I get like your reservation on that, but the reality is for any of us, like when we come to Jesus, it's because that was our worst day ever, becomes our best day ever. We have to acknowledge first that we are a sinner, we are messed up, we are broken and flawed, more flawed than we could ever imagine and yet, but Jesus accepts us that way. And so anybody's salvation day is usually the worst day ever, but the best day ever. And it's the day that our lives really, truly begin, because we didn't have life before that. And what you said, Matt, and about prayer, I think interceding for people on their behalf is one of the lost arts, I think, inside of, American Christianity, is that we're like, I don't know what to do or what to say. And like the Lord invites us, hey, I'll give you in words. And we're called to intercede for brothers and sisters. And so I think a confessing church is a powerful church, but too many churches are full of secrets, and that's where Satan just has a heyday. So,
and I think too, if we're going through something like Heather said, like she opened her Bible and it was just consistently like the steadfast love of the Lord and Jesus, wherever we're at, whatever we're going through, he's giving us things and giving us encouragement, and he's giving us anchors with where we're at. And so just his faithfulness in that and his tenderness towards us to show us those things.
Yeah, and I would just say a big thank you, Alex, to you, our mutual friend. Shout out to Zach. Good dude. You guys both have, really helped me along these years, and especially early on. And, thank you for both of you guys for inviting us on to be able to share our story. Again, our hope is that this can just encourage others to run to Jesus, because that's all that's going to matter, and that's what's going to help. So,
amen. Well, thank you, listeners, for listening to the podcast every week. Sad news for you is we're going to take a little bit of a break this summer. We always do that every summer to kind of come up with some new things for the next season and breathe a little bit. Doing this every single week for all of us it's a lot.
So fun.
It's so fun, but it's a lot. So
we love it.
We want to vacation with our kids and go to summer camps and things like that. And so thank you for listening. But we love your input, your voicemails you've left us, all the ideas that you give us every single week. And so if you've got things you're like, you need to talk about this when we reload back up in a few weeks, then we want to hear what those things are, because so much of what we talk about is people sent us an email or shot one of us an individual text, and we want to have uncomfortable conversations and put other people in the room that are willing to do that. So if you've got ideas, email us, podcast@cccomaha.org. Leave us a voicemail. You can call us with ideas, 402-885-9930. TikTok, Instagram, we're there at CCCOMA Podcast. But until next time, we'll talk to you then.